Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Legacy Leaders. I'm Scott McMeans, and today I'm joined by Lisa Riegel. Regal. We even talked about it. She is a leadership coach and has authored a book called NeuroWell. She's also the developer of a really cool software called Chakaba. There's a lot to unpack, and she's got a really wicked cool mind. And I want her to give us the best description of who she is, what she does, and why she's so good at it. So, Regal, I'm going to turn the microphone and the camera over to you. Tell us your story and what is so great about you.
All right. So I started out a long time ago. I was a teacher for 9 years at a high school. And then I moved into administration and started leading adults. And then thankfully I got an opportunity to do my doctoral work at Ohio State. So I went there and studied policy and leadership and started doing consulting. And so since about 2008, I have been working with teams and leaders. I do leadership coaching. I help them develop their teams and increase, efficiency, productivity, balance, autonomy, and accountability, strategic planning, those kinds of things. And what I found in my travels was that the policy piece can guide change, but people make change. And a lot of leaders were not really equipped with the skills they needed to lead their teams effectively and to understand that engagement is a very personal human side thing. So, how do we help to engage our staff and build culture around that? So then I went down the rabbit hole. I've always been kind of a nerd and I love science. And so I really started going into more about the brain science. So my doctoral work was really around motivation theory and building collective efficacy and the research behind that. So I kind of expanded that and really looked at the neurology of stress and how our brain actually, the structures in our brain shape our reality. And so for everybody, it's different. So how we perceive an event is very different. And so then I wrote NeuroWell, and NeuroWell is really, in a nutshell, it's about the idea that behaviors, whether it's academic or social or work-based behaviors, are the intersection between biology and context. So as a leader, if you understand the biology, you can understand your people better. And if you can control the context and make it a NeuroWell, safe, supportive, proactive culture, then you're going to engage people and they're going to be happier and healthier and more successful.
That is so cool. I don't want to take all that and synthesize it down to one or two phrases because there's way too much information there. But I take this as a comment I've made before. The most powerful business tool anybody has is their brain.
Yep.
And if their ability to be positive comes through, they're going to be a really good spot to make good decisions and have a positive impact on the people around them. If their mind is below and in a negative space, they're a pain in the ass to be around. Nobody likes them, right? And they just don't make good decisions because they're so narcissistically looking at things through the lens of themselves and what they can get out of it, as opposed to what is better for everybody. And I love the idea that behavior is a combination of biology and context. And context is a huge piece of this because, if great question for you. Given this scenario of doing one thing or another, you can't necessarily judge somebody on what they did until you understand the context, right?
Right.
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 So this is a weird analogy, but let me play this out. The rule of thumb for a company is do what's best for the company. And you bought a first class ticket. Well, is that best for the company or not? Well, I don't know. What's the context? Was it the only seat available on that plane, or were there 40 seats available and you just decided to buy the ticket? Okay, context matters. So in the world of biology plus context, you get behavior. And I think that's a really important piece for most business owners to understand, especially those that want to be successful, because that's how you get your people to be more performative or
Yeah.
performance driven, right?
Right. Well, and I think people are really, sadly, very unaware of their own biology.
Mm.
For example, 80% of the neural messaging in your brain happens below your nose. And below your nose is your limbic brain, and that's the brain that doesn't know time and can't tell a story. And it has a huge impact on how we perceive the world, how we make decisions, how regulated our body is. And we all know when we're stressed that, the thinking part of our brain up in the front kind of shuts down. And so one of the things I work with a lot is just building self-awareness. When you understand your brain and how it works, you have a lot of power to start pushing more neural message from the thinking part to the non-thinking part. And we think of behaviors a lot of times as a mark of character. And there is a character component to it, but there's a whole lot of biology that determines how our body reacts and the messages that our body sends to the part. So our decision making is impacted by our biology. And then the decision
Hmm.
making certainly has character involved in it. But when you're getting faulty data from the part below your nose, you're working with bad data in your decision making. And so I think when you understand yourself better and not through the lens of just set some goals and make better decisions, but really understanding why you are making decisions the way you are or how you perceive the world isn't how everybody else does. It opens up a whole world for developing empathy and for understanding the people, that you're leading. And
Yeah.
then once you understand that, the context is easy. The context follows that, hey, we need to build a culture that understands how the brain works. And, for example, I was working with a team. There's an exercise I do called Name It, Own It, Control It, where we talk about what does your body feel like when it's stressed? What's it look like when it's stressed? And what is your brain telling you? Because again, it's the limbic system of your brain that's telling your thinking part of the brain how to perceive something. And this team was working, and the one lady says, "Well, I don't know what I look like when I'm stressed." And her partner said, "I do." She said, "Your eyebrows disappear up into your bangs." And she's like, "Really?" And I said, "So here's an example when you're thinking about building your team. If you've got one person who gets twitchy, one person who gets blotchy, one person whose eyebrows are disappearing, if you're in the middle of a team meeting and you've got these visual things going on, it's time to take a break and to regulate because we're not going to make good decisions as a team
Yeah.
when we're sitting in a meeting and our bodies are dysregulated. So learning how to kind of take control and understand that biology gives people a whole lot of power and control. And I think when you're in control, you have less anxiety because anxiety is the product of not knowing.
Yeah. I've always been told the idea of your brain works in such a powerful way that it makes anxiety happen, so it keeps you safe. It keeps
Exactly.
you comfortable, right?
Our whole
So
body is designed to keep us alive and safe.
yeah. So it's that whole idea of, okay, one, how do we break our comfort zone so we become more comfortable in different scenarios? That's a different part of the brain, I would assume, right?
Yep.
And then how do we become less anxious? And if I'm understanding you correctly, becoming less anxious is a matter of understanding context and how your limbic and thinking brain connect. Am
Yeah,
I
it's
am I
the
bringing that together?
biology, right,
Yeah.
right. It's the biology. And that's when so Jacapa, the software I developed is it's kind of like a fitness tracker for your brain because step one is to be self-aware, right? Step
Yeah.
two is to be able to self-regulate so that you're not letting your limbic system in your brain take over your thinking. And then step three is to have self-control. And so Jacapa, we created, it's like a daily brain builder. So every day you're doing positivity, you're doing goal attainment, you're putting in data about your stress and what you're doing to reduce stress, and it's keeping all that data to tell you what works for you. And then you're journaling every day so that you can be better at communicating. Because communication's also, communication's cortex to cortex, right? But
Hmm.
the messages that get up to cortex are all unconscious messaging. So when you're having a conversation, what you're saying to me right now is running through multiple unconscious filters in my brain, whether you remind me of a friend or a foe, or whether you remind me of a family member, all the emotional filters that go along with that sensory information is going to cloud the way I respond to you. So if I'm self-aware of that, and if I am able to regulate my system, so I'm keeping my, I call this the CEO of the brain. And if your CEO, if your limbic system takes over, your CEO is out at Panera having a coffee. It's not there. It's
Not
not
even there.
working.
Yeah.
And I always use the example of think about during COVID. It was super stressful time. And so how many times did you have piles of things that you needed to do, but you couldn't prioritize and get
Yeah.
started? Or how many times did you try something and it didn't work quite well, and you were like, instead of being slightly annoyed, you were like homicidally angry about it. That's an example of your CEO is at Panera, and your
Yeah,
emotional brain is taking over. And so when we can regulate our body, we're actually empowering the CEO of our brain, which is truly who you are and what makes us human. We're empowering that to make the decisions in a much more measured way.
that's so okay. I appreciate the very simplistic way you've defined what we're talking about because this is such a deep rabbit hole, right? That I don't, I want people to understand this because this is such a great discussion about the power of the mindset, the power of positivity, and putting
Right.
yourself in a position to make good decisions because you're understanding this is who I am. This is how I maintain myself so I don't get crazy. And three, this is how I actually release my information back out to people because I am aware, I'm capable of regulation, and now I can control myself when I respond. So instead
Yes.
of being overly emotional, I'm
Yes.
now logical in thought process and I'm making decisions based on, like you said, all this data is coming into my brain and it's filtering through all this and blah, 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 blah. You can see the computer lights going on and off. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
decision has to be made. Okay, let's filter out what we need to. These are the important issues, information, and details I need to be aware of. Now I'm going to move forward.
Yeah. And in its simplest forms, it's basically, the old thing about write the email and then sit on it for a day before you send
Yeah,
it. If you're NeuroWell and you're self-aware and you're self-regulating and you're in self-control, then you don't have to because you're going to write the better email the first time. You're not going to get out
yeah,
of control and then have to sit on it and then come back and revise.
yeah. I wonder how different social media would be
Oh,
if right if everybody
yes.
took the NeuroWell mentality to writing something on social media. There
Yeah.
wouldn't be as many unbelievable distractions, and there probably would nowhere near be the number of corrections or retractions people have to make on social media,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, and I mean, you think about like, I mean, even I know the airline reported how many people they've had to like reprimand for poor behavior on an airplane. Like people are their systems are
Yeah.
dysregulated and rage, and that limbic brain is running a lot. We live in a world that's like a pressure cooker. And between social media and even when I do presentations, I talk about, young people. I think young people get a really unfair shake sometimes about they're unreliable, they're this, they're that. But think about this for a minute. I grew up with the Brady Bunch. I grew up with wholesome shows about families that were about being good and
Yeah.
about caring for your community. Our media today, our children and our teenagers and young adults, they've been based in Survivor, where you manipulate people and you lie to them and you vote them off and it's about
Yeah.
competition, it's about transaction, it's not about a collective community of people that are nice to each other. And so they've grown up with very different social norms and values, and then you throw social media on the fire and it
Oh
it
my
blows.
God. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
and,
never,
and
you
that
never think
impacts.
about it like that though, right? I
Yeah.
mean, not that I hate to say this. Well, you and I are old enough that we walked in the snow uphill twice to go to
Both
school, right?
ways,
Right.
barefoot.
Right. It's not that's not the argument we're trying to make. What we're saying is the context of which we grew up in
Yes.
was positive and open, caring, and trying to always do the right thing. And now we have some amazing programming on TV. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's
Right.
plenty of people that love Survivor and other shows like it, but every show or thing you watch on TV is how do I manipulate others to get what I want?
Yeah. And
And it's
that's not,
just
and
twisted
how
a
do I
little bit.
become, yeah, and how do I become an influencer, right? All
Yeah.
the kids want to be an influencer. Well, the influencers aren't nice people a lot of times. And
And
so, it's like you're being rewarded for being competitive and transactional. And, and I feel like it kind of comes down to if you think of it like a pie, some people believe you have a pie and they deserve every piece of it. Other people believe when you work together, the pie actually gets bigger and
Mhm.
everybody gets more. We are in a society right now where it's a finite pie and people are scrapping for the biggest piece. And it's
Yeah.
a completely different mindset. And from a biological perspective, that changes. There's a structure in your brain called a thalamus. And the thalamus's job is kind of like a data manager to bring in all the information from the environment. And then what it does is it looks through your sensory memories and it says, okay, this is like that. It groups it together. And then your body responds in the same way. So when you're in a situation where you are basted in negativity, you develop these filters in your sensory memories that say the world is chaotic and dangerous, people can't be trusted, and
Mm,
those are the filters through which all that information goes. So when I talk about like this part of your brain is doing a lot of work before you get to think about it, if you have a positive outlook, you're going to notice the positive things in your environment all day. If you have a negative outlook, your thalamus is actually looking for things to confirm that bias. So when you talk about gratitude or positivity, there's some biology and structural things that change in your brain when
yeah.
you use that. And then it becomes automatic. It's not like you're faking it. It becomes that's how you view the world, that it is a better place than if you view it through a negative lens.
It's so crazy that the littlest of things can have such a dramatic
Yeah.
impact on the rest of your perceptions. And this is something that I do a lot when I'm coaching folks is you need to surround yourself not with everybody that agrees with you
Hmm.
on certain things, but you need to align yourself with people that support your vision, mission, and culture in such a way that they are on board with what you're doing, not to be argumentative, but to be suggestive of better opportunities. Don't go into a situation where you have all these yes men because you're never going to be better.
No.
Don't surround yourself with people that are so negative you can never move out. What I'm suggesting, and I think this is what we're talking about, is get yourself a crew that aligns to your vision, and then they have different talents they can contribute. I think that's the better way of looking at it. And it's funny because as we go with leadership, and we try to teach people how to be great leaders, we never really point to the context of what it's like to be a leader of people that
Mhm.
are negative
Yeah.
or don't necessarily follow your lead in such that they don't agree with the company it's doing. And I would suggest if you have somebody on your team that doesn't necessarily agree with the way you what you want to have done, why are they on your team?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I think you need to surround yourself with people who believe that the as you do well, the pie gets bigger, not
Yeah.
people who are competing to, tear somebody else down. And I just the other thing that I studied for a long time that I use to frame how I coach people is collective efficacy. And it's
Oh,
sort of the magic dust of a successful company or organization. And so there's four ways you build it. And part of the way it's built is through celebration. It's through clear expectations
yeah.
and celebrations of people where I'm a better teammate because you're better, because you did something better, as opposed to trying to blame and shame and,
Hmm.
and vie. And it's funny, my husband and I've been married for 25 years and we've had a lot of friends that have been divorced and I do some life coaching with people just, on the NeuroWell stuff. And one of the things I've seen in marriages even is that some marriages it's transactional. I got to do this, so now you get to do this, as opposed to just do what makes you happy. And, one of the reasons I think that my marriage has lasted is because when I do well, he's excited. He's not
Yeah.
threatened. He's not, when he's doing well, he's an artist. And when he wanted to get out of a job and really, take a whack at art for a living, I didn't even blink. I was like, do it. I'll
Yeah.
take care of things here. You do it. It wasn't a matter of like, well, you have to bring in this much and I have to bring in this much. It wasn't that transactional. And in the same thing in business, you want your leadership team. I always say that organizations are like a crew boat with 10 people on it. And if you've got a great organization, you might have three people out of that 10 that are rowing like crazy and also rowing together in the same direction. You
Yeah.
have five people who are staring at the scenery or kind of paddling around, not necessarily even in the same
Hmm.
direction. And then, depending on your culture, you have two or you have three people that actively try to sink your boat. We spend way too much time on the people sinking our boat. What we should be spending our time on is taking those, I call them the coalition of the willing, take those rowers and guide them to maybe a little bit different outcome or a different
Yeah.
location. Those five rowers in the middle, they're going to continue to row and they're going to start to build capacity watching the early adopters. And your boat sinkers eventually, they won't have any informal power.
Yeah, and I agree with this. And I think eventually the non-rowers are the ones that realize I don't want to be on this boat anymore. I'm uncomfortable being on this boat, right? And I'm going to leave because the culture that they are trying to adhere to is not something that the company has anymore. We are all
Right.
positive, moving in the right direction. And you know what? You are an anchor, therefore you need to leave.
Yeah.
Um,
And if you get that 80% all rowing in the right direction, that 80% is going to turn around and look at those two people behind him and go away.
yeah, leave
Either
us
get on
alone.
or get out.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love the concept of collective efficacy. This is something that I say it a little bit differently, but there was a study that came out that said if one employee does something to save 30 seconds of their day by not doing their job thoroughly and handed it off to somebody else, over the course of 30 days, 300 additional man hours have now been generated because
Yeah.
somebody decided to take 30 seconds off. And
Yeah.
what people don't realize is it's a closed system within that business. So if I, as somebody in accounting, let's just say, take 30 seconds to not completely fill out a form and send it off to the finance team, by the time it comes all the way around to the sales rep that has to give me their expense report, well, they didn't do their job right. So now I have to do all this extra work. And what
Right.
people don't realize is if you would just do your job, the person next in line of the business flow that happens would be exponentially happy because you know what? They don't have to go do any more work to get their job done because you did yours.
Yeah.
And when you start implementing programs and policies that say this is what you're supposed to do and how well you're or how you're supposed to get it done, everybody becomes unbelievably more efficient. And that's why the collective efficacy makes sense to me because it's just asking people to do what they do and do it well
Right.
enough that nobody else is asked to do it for them.
Right.
And eventually the same thing happens, whether it's that environment we're talking about or that boat. Eventually people that don't fall in that bucket, they want to leave because they're so uncomfortable because they know they don't belong.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
such a great concept. This has been an amazing conversation. What is it that you think is the best lesson a business owner should learn as they go through their business development? You know,
I
as they're
think
building
that
their business.
I think the most important thing that business owners need to know is that the real power of their company isn't their product, it isn't their marketing, it's their people. And
Great.
they can have the best product in the world and fail. They can have the best, software systems, they can have the best processes and operational procedures, but if they're not in tune with the people, and if they're not building the people skills and the leadership skills and that collective efficacy, they will fail.
100% agree with that. Thank you. That's a really good top to this conversation. Last question, because I love this question. I think it's so much fun. I'm going to put you in a time machine. I'm going to send you back and you get to meet 18-year-old Lisa.
Oh Lord.
You two get a chance to take a seat on a park bench. What's that conversation sound like?
I would tell myself that the most important thing in life is to find a path to happiness and joy and
Okay.
to live in joy, and that your path isn't the same as someone else. I think young people, and I know myself included, think that everybody's on the same road to the same finish line, and that's not true. So instead of
Love that.
competing with everybody, really thinking about, you want to be financially independent because you need to eat and live and things like that, but
Hmm.
finding joy in your life, and it doesn't always have to be in your job. You can be happy at your job and enjoy it, but finding ways to have strong connections with people and feel fulfilled and happy, that's the key to a successful life.
I love that. And the one thing I wrote down is joy is universal, but not everybody's joy is the same.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and when
Right.
I was about 25, I went through what I call my quarter life crisis. And I was living my life according to other people's expectations of success.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just need a hard stop. I quit my job. I called off a wedding. I was supposed to get married. And I just went and walked around in Florida for a while. And I was like Forrest Gump walking around, just like I just need to reset. And that was really the life lesson that I came down to was I don't have to have the same path as someone else.
Yeah.
And I don't think kids know that because we're so competitive. You have to get the best data on your stuff. You have to get your best ACT score. You have to go to the best college. We put
Yeah.
everybody on the same road, and we don't realize that the beauty of living is you get to choose. You get to choose
Yeah.
your happy.
No, at least that's a great point. And one of the things that goes along with that in my brain is your joy is yours. It doesn't necessarily have to be involving anybody else, but your talent is how you find joy. And if you're an unbelievable electrician and you can have an amazing career as an electrician and help people, and that's where you get your joy, why the hell would you go to college?
Right.
Right?
Right.
But to your point, we are steering people down paths that we think they're supposed to do, not necessarily what they want to do. And I
Yeah.
don't want to go back and say high schools are doing a bad thing, but we're the guidance counselors. When a student is representing, I'm a really bright kid, but I have no interest in going on to school. What else is available to me?
Yeah.
The first
Well,
thing to
when
go to the
we,
military,
yeah,
right? And
right.
there needs to be a better way of taking talent and skill and allowing it to flourish so they can in fact find the joy in the context of their life as opposed to what somebody else thinks they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Well, and when you think about leading with joy rather than leading with, like hope is a mathematical equation. It is goal, directed energy, and a pathway. And we spend so much time on a pathway
Hmm.
that we forget that that goal directed energy is different for everybody. And so if you're focused on joy, even if I'm doing a job that I don't necessarily, it's not my vocation, it's not my calling, but I like it, I'm good at it. But like
Hmm.
my if I'm focused on joy, then I'm going to enjoy the process of working with people and with teams and the process of being successful as a group, right?
Right.
So, some of the jobs that are parts of companies, like they're not fun. Like they're things that just need to get done. But if you build around joy and you build around kind of that collective efficacy, then people get rewards beyond the tasks that they do. And they're happier and they're
Yeah.
healthier and they're more successful.
And you know what? That's a really good lesson for business owners to take into account. How do I get joy into my business? It's not, I'm going to make everybody happy. It's how do I allow people to find their joy within this job or within
Right.
this path I've built for them in the company? Really
Yeah.
good stuff.
Yeah.
Lisa, thank you so much for being on the program.
Yeah.
I
You're
really
welcome. This
appreciate
was
it. This
fun.
was great. And all the information, get in touch with Lisa, her book. Any other details will be down in the description below. So I encourage people to do that. And Lisa, thank you for being on the program. We'll see everybody on the next episode.
Thank you.